Now we will discuss heat exchangers. This is a very important topic in the field of heat transfer. Now it is true that so far we have studied the mechanism of heat transfer from one fluid to another fluid, from fluid to solid. Okay. We have not learned one fluid to another fluid, we have learned from solid to fluid within the solid conduction. But in practice, what happens in almost all industrial processes, we have to exchange heat from one fluid to other fluid. And the device in which it is done is known as heat exchanger, which allows the heat to be exchanged. For an example, just in condensation boiling, I gave the examples like that steam power plant condenser, where the steam is condensed. It is an example for condensation, at the same time heat exchanger. This condenser itself, where the cooling water flows through the tube and the steam condenses at the outer surface, as a whole it is heat exchanger, where the heat exchange takes place between water and steam. Similarly, in case of refrigeration condenser, that the heat transfer takes place between refrigerant, that is a working fluid in refrigerating cycles, and the air. Similar is the case for boiling in boiler, that in the water tube, the water is heated where the combustion products flows past the tube. This is also a heat exchanger. Apart from this, there are various processes where phase change may not take place. Here phase change takes place. One liquid has to be heated from some temperature, lower temperature to higher temperature. One liquid may be required to be cooled from some high temperature to low temperature. This is accomplished in a device known as heat exchanger. So therefore, we will discuss heat exchangers. Now heat exchangers are of two types basically. One is direct contact, another is indirect contact. Now indirect contact is the exchanger where the two fluids which exchanges heat does not get an opportunity to have contact between one another. That means they are not mixed, they are separated by a solid wall, and via the solid wall the heat transfer takes place. The condenser of a steam power plant, the boiler tube, and many other are such examples. And this is mostly used in industry, because the two fluids cannot be mixed together, otherwise the fluid properties will change and we will not be able to regain the fluid which is required for the subsequent process. But in some cases where it is not needed, a direct contact heat exchanger takes place where both the fluids are directly contact. For example, in a cooling tower, you know, in a cooling tower the hot water which comes out from the circulating or the tube, cooling water tube, circulating water tube we tell, in the condenser, that takes the heat from the steam which is condensed. So that water has to be cooled again to recirculate through the condenser tubes. So to do that we have to cool that water, and that is done in a device known as cooling tower. That is also heat exchanger because heat is exchanged. So this is cooled with the help of air, atmospheric air, and there what is happened, the water is sprayed in the form of atomized, fine atomized spray through different nozzles used for this purpose, and air is allowed to flow, and which flows in the opposite direction of the spray, and both of them are mixed together, and the air takes the heat of the water, and some of the water also evaporates, make a evaporative cooling of the bulk of the water. I am not going into that deep. This is one example of direct contact type exchanger in a jet condenser. So this is known as surface condenser. Earlier I told jet condenser, the steam is ejected in the form of jet. Sorry, water is ejected in the form of jet in the steam which is condensed. So therefore the condensate is a mixture of steam condensed plus the water jet which is sprayed. So therefore direct and indirect heat exchangers, we will discuss the indirect heat exchangers which are largely used in practice. And another type of heat exchanger is used which is known as regenerator. The difference between regenerator and this type of indirect and direct heat exchanger, these are known as recuperator. The difference is that this recuperator type of heat exchanger, where there may be two types, direct and indirect, the both fluids flow simultaneously and the heat exchange takes place either via a solid material or by the direct mixing. But in a regenerator, what happens? The cold and hot fluids are allowed to flow alternatively through a solid body which has a high heat storage capacity with high specific heat. They take the heat from the hot water and store it, and when the hot fluid, they store it, and when the cold fluid is allowed to pass through it, they exchange that heat. And that solid matrix is made of either pebbles, powders, wire mesh, which produces large surface area for heat transfer and at the same time a high specific heat or heat capacity to store maximum heat. And alternately the hot and cold fluid are passed through it, and there is a switch which changes the hot and cold fluid cycle. That means that operates in such a way, once the hot fluid is allowed to flow and another time cold fluid is allowed to flow. This is known as regenerator. This is also of two types. One is static regenerator, where the solid matrix is fixed and alternately hot and cold fluid is allowed to flow. Another case is there which is used in the air preheater of a steam power plant. These are for your information, where a matrix moves. It is in a form of drum which rotates, and one side continuously the hot fluid flows, that is the combustion products, hot gas, and another side air which is being preheated before going to the furnace is allowed to flow. That means the solid matrix by its dynamic nature rotation captures heat, stores heat from one side when it is in contact with the hot fluid, and when it comes in turn other side with the cold fluid, it transfers heat to the cold fluid. That is the dynamic regenerator. This is for your information, but we will learn mostly that is used in industry is the recuperator type of heat exchanger with indirect contact. That means heat transfer takes place between hot and cold fluid by via a solid partition. Now I show you the most simple type heat exchanger is like this, a concentric tube heat exchangers. What happened? This is the most simple type we can conceive, that there is a two concentric pipes, one is the inner one and another is the outer one. So one fluid flows through the inner tube, another fluid flows through the outer tube. Usually the hot fluid is allowed to flow through the inner and the cold one is outer, but not necessarily. In a steam power plant it is other way, and ultimately the entire thing is insulated. Now the difference between these two is that in this left hand figure the flow of both the fluids are in the same direction, whereas the flow of both the fluids are in the opposite direction. Now here this inner tube is known as the tube, where the outer tube which creates this annular passage for the flow of the other fluid is known as the shell. That's why this type of heat exchanger is known as shell and tube heat exchanger, which is very, very common, and every industry people tell shell and tube heat exchanger. If you do not know what is shell and tube heat exchanger, as if you do not know what I will tell, the name of your parents, like that. So shell and tube heat exchanger, you know what is a shell and tube heat exchanger? Shell and tube I don't know, but then you are gone. So this is known as shell and tube, the outer tube is known as shell, and this arrangement is known as parallel flow and this is counter flow. And from my student days I tell you, I found that this is a misnomer, because when I thought from the fluid mechanics point of view, both are parallel flow in a sense, the flow streamlines are parallel to each other. It should be co-flow and it should be counter flow. And when I asked my teacher, he told, no, I cannot change the definition. This is going for years and decades together. It's parallel flow and counter flow. You cannot define it as a co-flow and counter flow. However, in my mind always it worked that parallel flow is a co-flow and this is a counter flow. Now sometimes this direction may not be parallel. That's why I am telling, because next time when we will define, there may be a perpendicular direction, that one fluid may flow perpendicular to the another flow direction, that is known as cross flow. And usually to enhance the heat transfer, this is done like this. This is a type of modified type of cell and tube heat exchanger with one cell pass and one tube pass, cross counter flow mode of operation. What is the meaning of this? I am telling you. Here the difference from the very simple one conceived here is the number of tubes are there, and one fluid flows through these tubes on one direction and goes out from the other direction. So this one direction flow of a fluid is known as one pass. These are all industrial language, again I am telling. So you see, our case is like that, starting from boundary layer thickness and all these things. Now we have come down to industrial terminology, that pass, that is known as one pass, one tube pass. But there are multiple tubes but single pass. Now the cell side fluid which is entered like this and going, sorry, this is inlet and this is tube inlet, sorry, correct, cell inlet and cell outlet. That means this must have a counter flow type, because the tube inlet, that is the tube fluid, flows in this direction, whereas the shell tube flows in this direction. This should be counter flow, but at the same time this is a cross flow, cross counter flow. Why? Baffle walls are placed like this, so that cell side tube, after flowing like this, it don't flow like this, it doesn't flow like this, it goes like this, that. That means that creates more residence time. That creates more residence time by changing its flow direction and makes more heat transfer with this fluid. And this way, if you divide the flow, make the hurdles like that by putting these walls, these are known as baffle walls or baffles, you can have a cross flow and the counter flow type. When it flows in this direction, for example here, in this direction through this baffle, it is a cross flow. Again it is a counter flow. So therefore it is a mix of cross counter flow mode of operation. Here is a one cell pass, one tube pass, but multiple tube, and use of baffles to increase the flow residence time for this cell side fluid and to cover a larger path like this, okay, and to make a cross and counter flow mode of heat exchanger. Now next I show you shell and tube heat exchanger. Again, for your practical information, industry people will be very happy. This is what shell and tube type. Number one is one cell pass and two tube pass. You see two tube pass, that means tube inlet one direction, again it comes out, is a U tube type, tube outlet. That means in a U shape, it comes here, that means this is one pass and it comes like that. That means inlet and outlet in the same side, and this is the shell side inlet with the baffle wall. So this is a two tube, one cell pass and two tube pass with the baffles, both cross, counter and parallel mode. Similarly, number two is the two cell passes and one tube pass. There are two cells. That means this is one cell in series, another cell. These are all done to enhance the heat transfer rate to meet the required service. That means the amount of heating or cooling of the fluid desired. This you can see in any book. There is nothing great to take any note out of this, just this is for your information. Now another type of cross flow heat exchangers are used. This, before going to this, I think well, compact heat exchangers, this also comes in the category of compact heat exchangers. Okay, first of all I will explain this. This is another type of heat exchangers where the tubes side fluids are flowing through a number of tubes, and where there are number of plates attached to this which acts as fin surface, fin with both fluids unmixed. What is the meaning of this? I will tell you. The arrangement is like that. These plates act as fins to all these tubes. So through tube one fluid flows, and heat exchange from this fluid to the outer fluid is enhanced by these fins, whereas another fluid, that is the outer fluid, which flows through the finned passage, is a cross flow type through this finned passage. That means this passage in between the fins, this is a typical cross flow heat exchanger fin with both fluids unmixed, means these are unmixed, not that way that they are physical mixing, but this unmixed word is used in heat exchanger. That means this fluid is guided through this fin passage and is not allowed to move in the transverse direction, this direction or this direction. This is restricted. This flows only in this direction through this passage. But here what happens, there is an open space and there is a shell type of thing and the cross flow takes place. There is no such restriction for the fluid to moves in both transverse direction. That's why this is known as unfin with one fluid mixed and the other fluid unmixed. That means there is no fin to guide the flow of the other fluids in cross flow directions. That is the only difference in the word unmixed and mixed. Okay. So therefore, with one fluid mixed and the other unmixed, that means this is unmixed, this is guided through the tube. This is not very important, just a practical thing. Now, which is important little bit, but still practical, is compact heat exchangers. This is very important. Employer asks, what is a compact heat exchanger? Very simple. Very simple, that we want a heat exchanger which must have a very high heat transfer rate so that it meets the service required, huge service. We have to cool a hot fluid by a very high degree of cooling. That means the temperature difference is very large, or the other way, heating, so that it will meet the desired service of high heat transfer rate, but it should be compact, be small. How it is done? We know the rate of heat transfer for a imposed temperature field depends upon the surface area. So if you can make the surface area more, heat transfer rate is more, for which you know that the liquid is injected for heat transfer purpose in the form of spray. This is because if you split the liquid into spray of very minute drops, then the ratio of surface area to volume increases, which enhances for the same flow of liquid the heat transfer rate by enhancing the surface area. Similarly, if we can design a heat exchanger which provides a high surface area but a less volume, because the size is very important. If you tell I have a big heat exchanger which has a big surface area, but it is so big that its size is big, volume is big, so that how can I accommodate this? Question of accommodation, the space requirement. So therefore, the compact heat exchanger is an exchanger which is very small but high heat transfer rate. That means whose surface area to volume ratio is very high. That is the index, that is known as surface area density. So that surface area to volume ratio has to be very high, so that in a small size we have high heat transfer rate. There is a criteria, not very much strict, but we usually have this convention. When the surface area per unit volume exceeds 700 meter square, this you can write 700 meter square per meter cube, you usually refer a heat exchanger as the compact heat exchanger. So everybody wants for a compact heat. A simple example I am telling you, that if you have a big long rod of diameter d and heat exchange takes place between the two fluids, that shell and tube heat exchanger and shell. So you know that if you go on increasing the length, you have the more surface area, pi dl. Pi dl is more. So for example, here you have the more length and more the surface area, pi dl. But the same length, if you make a helical, that coil tube, helical coil or something, if you make a coil tube within a small space, you have more surface area. Sometimes by changing the flow field, we create more surface area virtually by creating the residence time. So anyway, you have to provide something either by geometrical surface area, by enhancing the heat transfer by providing extended surface area, so that we have a, or the flow field itself, so that we have a compact heat exchangers. Okay. Next is, these compact heat exchangers are of different type. Just I show you certain compact heat exchanger. This is flat tube type of thing. and the fin plates. These are also circular tubes with circumferential thin fins. This is with rectangular fins, which already I showed you, and this is very interesting. This is parallel plates with fins, and these passages we have the fluid flowing, and another fluid flows through this alternate passage. One fluid flows through this passage, another fluid flows through this passage from this direction. This is a cross flow, and also with a corrugated this surface which acts as a fin, which provides more surface area like this. These are the fins. These are for you. This is circumferential fin, this is the flat fins. That means extended surface area. That means somehow you have to make a geometry which provide more surface area, and if I have to make the flow in such a way that it provides more heat transfer, because you know from our basic heat transfer knowledge that rate of heat transfer is enhanced by the temperature gradient, which depends upon the flow field and also by the surface area, because finally the heat transfer is minus K into gradient of temperature. So next is, okay, this is all right. Now next I will go for the analysis, but before that, sometimes a question I used to ask, nowadays there is no scope, some 20 years back. If you go, some of your teachers face these questions when they were my student, because this question cannot be answered. This is an informative thing. If you don't know that what is the largest means from the compact point, or the most compact heat exchanger, heat and mass exchanger. Sometimes heat and mass transfer are coupled in certain devices. That is the chemical engineering domain, not in your domain. In the earth, can you tell me which is the most compact heat exchanger, heat and mass exchanger in the earth? Somebody tries to think that something was used in that industry in USA, some radiator of General Motors in the Harrison radiator division. My elder brother went there and he told they have developed the most compact heat exchanger like that, but what is the answer, do you know? The next question is that who is the creator of this heat exchanger? The most the scientists so far have only exploited the nature. We could not create a nature. Somo, you know the answer. This question answer you know. No, this compact heat is soil. Scientists only exploit the nature, cannot conquer the nature. Nature gives all clue to the scientists for solving the problems and to know the nature more and more. So the creator is God. With this thing also difficult to answer this. Creator is God through us. We are implemented there, the way the worker works, but God is the designer. This is our lung. I cannot tell you the exact figure of the surface area of the lung that exchanges heat and mass transfer. You will be astonished to know. If one day you know what is the biological system, you can ask Suman Chakraborty, who is one of our bright and young colleagues who work in the interface of engineering and bioscience. He knows some quantitative figures. You will be astonished to know the surface area of the lung. However, this is just one tips I give you, that the most compact heat and mass exchangers designed by God through us in the earth. So we cannot reach anywhere near to that, whatever exceptional engineers you are to design somebody that. Forget about your General Motors Harrison radiator division. Okay, so medical people are astonished, and that is the reason for which medical people never think of doing any research. So they are very happy with their entire skill to maintain the thing, because their maintenance is huge. Because a medical doctor tells me that what we will do beyond that, the creation is so complex and such amazing, to maintain it we spend our entire skill of the lifetime. That is enough for us. You people think of designing things. Okay? Many of your fathers may be medical officer, you can ask that. Now, I will go to the heat exchangers. Now this is tube fluid and this is, shell fluid. Now this is a parallel flow. This is a parallel flow, please, this is a parallel flow arrangement and this is a counter flow arrangement. This is the tube side fluid flow, tube side fluid, and this is the shell side fluid. Shell side fluid. Now, this is a parallel flow, as I told, that flows in the same direction. This is a counter flow. Now we will go for analysis, for which we take a very simple configuration of one tube and one shell flowing either in parallel, that means co-flow, or in counter flow, opposite direction, so that we can understand our analysis more intensive. Now if we draw the temperature diagram along the length of the heat exchanger or the surface area, whatever you tell, in bracket I am writing, length or surface area, if you go this direction. Now, this tube side fluid enters with some temperature. Let us consider the tube side fluid is the hot fluid and this fluid is the cold fluid. Now, one assumption we will make, that the fluid temperature is uniform across the cross section. There is no variation. This varies only in this direction because of the heat transfer. If you consider this is hot and this is cold, then the heat is flowing in this direction, Q. Similarly, heat is flowing in this direction from the hot to the cold fluid. Now, if we make a qualitative picture how the hot fluid changes its temperature, at any section hot fluid temperature is represented by a uniform temperature. We consider the temperature is uniform across a section. Then if this is the outlet section, we can qualitatively show this is the hot fluid temperature curve. We use the suffix H as the hot fluid and 1 as the inlet section, and TH2 is the outlet section, 2 outlet, 1 inlet. Similarly, the cold fluid temperature will be like this, which enters at a lower temperature Tc1 and gains heat and comes out at a temperature Tc2 which is greater than Tc1, and heat is flowing in this direction via this tube wall, which may be thin or thick. Okay. Now, here one thing, that to make the heat transfer Q, there should be always a temperature gradient. So therefore, the outlet temperature Tc2 in this case is always less than TH2. Tc2 cannot be higher than TH2. Tc2 is always less than TH2, always. Otherwise, heat transfer will not take place. As the difference goes on decreasing, the rate of heat transfer is decreased, so that if you have a infinitely long heat exchanger, you can expect that these two things will be meeting or converging to one value, because the heat transfer will go on decreasing as this difference decreases, so that the change will be again less. That means always in a finite heat exchanger Tc2, that the cold fluid outlet temperature will be less than that of the hot fluid outlet temperature. What happens in this counterflow exchanger? Counterflow exchanger, the hot fluid temperature is like this. It is flowing in this direction, that is TH1 and TH2, which comes out here. But the cold fluid is flowing in the opposite direction, and the cold fluid temperature will be going like this. And here you observe the heat transfer takes place in this direction from hot to cold fluid, and this temperature gradient at any temperature difference rather at any section is responsible for the heat transfer. So therefore, Tc2 has to be less than Th1, but Tc2 may under certain condition may be greater than Th2. That means here Tc2 may be greater than Th2 under certain condition, but Tc2 is less than Th1 always. That means in a counterflow it is possible that the outlet temperature may be heated more than the temperature of the hot fluid outlet temperature, more than the hot fluid outlet temperature. It is possible only in the counterflow, not in the parallel flow. Clear? Under certain cases where one of the fluid changes phase, that means condensation and boiling, we can draw the diagram like this. For condensation, the hot fluid does not change its temperature. That means if the hot fluid is Th1, so Th2 is Th1. We can show it. And the cold fluid, for example the water, and this is steam. For the hot fluid does not change its temperature, so it looks like that. This is expressed as the specific heat of hot fluid tending to infinity. Just like Prandtl number 0, Prandtl number infinity, molten metal, heavy oil, the thermal boundary layer, hydrodynamic boundary layer, like this. In case of boiling, if you are told that draw the figure in case of boiling. In case of boiling, I am not drawing here that heat exchanger thing. We assume this is the inlet, this is the outlet plane. In case of boiling hot fluid, which is the gas, high temperature gas, that changes its temperature, but the cold fluid doesn't change its temperature. That means Tc2, Tc1. That means here we write that CCT tends to infinity. And the beauty is that for boiling and condensation, the qualitative picture is such, it is immaterial whether the flow is parallel or counter. The picture is same. But for other cases, when there is no phase change, picture is not same. Now, after this, I will go hurriedly to the concept of overall heat transfer. Overall heat transfer coefficient. This is very important for the analysis. Now, overall heat transfer coefficient. Overall heat transfer coefficient, just have a recapitulation. Overall heat transfer coefficient. Now, what is overall heat transfer coefficient? One thing is true, that we know that the heat transfer takes place from hot fluid to cold fluid. If we consider the hot fluid in the pipe, inner tube side, it is in this direction, otherwise it is in this direction. That at every section heat is flowing in the direction from one tube to another tube, tube to cell or cell to tube via this wall. Okay, and the responsible temperature difference is this one, which is changing along the length. So we recapitulate a heat transfer coefficient definition. Let us consider this case again, what we read earlier, that there is a pipe. There is a pipe, I am drawing the symmetric part from the axis, which has a fluid flowing through this pipe. Simply going back to the first few lectures, introductory lectures of heat transfer which I taught you, fluid at a temperature of TF1, and there is another fluid flowing through outside fluid which is at TF2, that means the ambient fluid. And if we consider that TF1 is greater than TF2 and heat is therefore flowing in this direction Q. Now this is inner radius Ri, and if this is the outer radius Ro, that means Ro minus Ri is the thickness, and if the thermal conductivity of this solid material is K, okay, and if the inside heat transfer coefficient of the fluid is Hi, if you remember very initial days, a very simple expression which is constant throughout the length. Similarly, the outside heat transfer coefficient of the fluid, this coefficient initially we used to tell film coefficient. This is because we have now learned details in convective heat transfer. The entire resistance comes through a thin film adhering to the surface, either in forced or free convection. That is why it is known as film heat transfer coefficient. And if the length of the pipe is L, this length, then if you remember correctly, then Q is equal to TF1 minus TF2, that is overall temperature difference, potential difference, divided by 1 upon HI AI, if AI is the inner surface area, that means twice pi Ri into L. I am not writing in this fashion, inner surface area, plus, if you remember, ln R0 by Ri divided by twice pi KL plus 1 by HO AO, which is twice pi RO into L, that's our outer surface area. So this is nothing but the total resistance. This is convective resistance, the inner fluid. This is the conductive resistance due to thickness of the tube. That means after the film conduction, which we conceive as convection, it goes through solid conduction, and then again film conduction or the liquid conduction under flow, which is the convective flow. So the convective resistance again. So this is the overall resistance, this is the thermal network. Now if we define a overall heat transfer coefficient U, this is overall heat transfer coefficient. Overall heat transfer coefficient. If we define a overall heat transfer coefficient U in a manner that total heat transfer, total heat that is transferred, that is same Q, is given by this overall heat transfer some reference area into TF1 minus TF2. One has to tell that based on what reference area heat transfer coefficient is defined. For example, Reynolds number based on one characteristic geometrical dimension. You have to tell for internal flow this dimension is your hydraulic diameter. In a pipe it is simply the diameter of the pipe. Similarly, for a flat plate the hydraulic, the characteristic geometrical dimension is the length of the plate. So therefore, you have to tell that U based on what reference area. So if you consider a general sense a reference area, then if we define in this, then one can write 1 by UA reference. Sometimes this reference area may be either outside surface area or inside surface area. And accordingly, U is defined as UO or UI, that means based on outside reference area or inside reference area. One can write by comparing these two, 1 by UO AO is equal to 1 by UI AI, all these things as the total resistance. That means 1 by HI AI plus ln R0 by Ri twice pi KL plus 1 by H0 A0. So therefore, we get a concept of overall heat transfer coefficient. That means if I know the convective heat transfer coefficients at two sides and know the thermal conductivity and the thickness of the pipe or R0 Ri, explicitly I have to know, only thickness will not work, then I can find out a overall heat transfer coefficient based on some reference area, and if I know it, I can find out the rate of heat transfer under this situation. Usually the pipe is thin and its thermal conductivity is so high, made of material which has a high thermal conductivity, and the thickness is not that high because the flow is less. So thickness has to be there to sustain the hoop stress because of the pressure created by the flow. So therefore, if the flow is less, so R0 Ri, this part may be neglected simply, the conduction resistance, then this becomes like this. And this is the concept of overall heat transfer coefficient, which holds good here. Here also the flow heat transfer takes place from one fluid inner side, let us consider the hot fluid, to the outer cold fluid via the tube material, solid tube. Now another thing is there which is known as fouling factor. I am telling it, after a long operation of a heat, these are all practical things, but we have to know as an information, there is nothing great at all, that after a long operation in industries, usually what happens, the impurities in the liquid which is flowing both the sides, either tube sides and cell sides, get slowly deposited and make a coating in the form of a film over the two surfaces. These are known as scales, not our geometric or dynamic scales of our theoretical analysis. This scale means a formation of thin coating. The impurities gets coated and makes a scale formation. And what happens physically, that puts an additional thermal resistance to the heat flow, both inner side and outer side, because of the scale formation due to impurities. And that is expressed by a fouling factor denoted by R. R comes from the resistance. This fouling factor is expressed in terms of a resistance R, and which is defined as, and because of that what happens, thermal resistance enhances, therefore the overall heat transfer coefficient gets reduced, because thermal resistance is 1 by U times the reference area. And therefore, it is the heat transfer terminology in the practice, they define the U dirty. Dirty means the dirty exchanger, which has already the scale formation. U dirty, this is the definition of fouling factor in terms of a resistance, minus U clean. That means the 1 by U dirty is more than 1 by U clean. That means the resistance of the dirty tube is more than the resistance of the clean tube by this factor R. This is a fouling factor. Sometimes people may ask, what is the fouling factor? Do you know? Yes, it is an additional resistance due to the scale formation because of the impurities, and this is defined as U dirty. So therefore, one can write 1 by U dirty, I can write now 1 by U dirty A0 or is equal to 1 by U dirty, again I express in any AI, is equal to 1 by HIAI, and this dirty, inner surface may be dirty, outer surface may be dirty. So therefore, this fouling factor is RF. So this is for inner RF I by AI, plus if you do not neglect the conduction resistance, this is R0 by Ri twice pi L K plus Rf O by AO plus its convective resistance. So therefore, one can take care of the fouling factor in this way, because fouling factor is expressed as a resistance inverse of this U. So U unit is what? Watt per meter square degree Celsius, whereas the thermal resistance unit is meter square degree Celsius per watt, and fouling factor is expressed in terms of meter square degree Celsius per watt. So if it is expressed like that, you can take care of, if it is told fouling factor inside the tube, outside the tube, accordingly you can take care of AIAO and can use this overall heat transfer coefficient. Clear? Now, the major problem comes after knowing all these things. The major problem comes here. I rub all these things. The major problem comes here that all these expressions, a overall heat transfer coefficient was defined so that I can express this TF1 minus TF2. Here one assumption I took that TF1 and TF2 constant. That means the potential for heat transfer is constant throughout. In our very preliminary heat transfer problems, we took it. A constant fluid temperature, a constant fluid, that means the potential constant. But here what happens? Delta T for heat transfer changes. So if I write this here for heat exchanger, Q is equal to U, let us take overall outer surface area, UA, or inner surface area, reference area, A0 or AI, doesn't matter. Delta T, what delta T? This is a big question. This delta T changing. For example, in a parallel flow, it is TH1 minus TC1 or TH2 minus TC2. So delta T is maximum at the inlet. In case of parallel flow, this goes on decreasing. Which delta T I will take? Heat transfer takes place at each and every section following that rule, but with a varying TF1 minus TF2. So which TF1 minus TF2 we will take? So therefore, the question comes, we should define a overall heat transfer in such a way that the Q is expressed in terms of this with a suitable mean temperature difference, which is some mean of the inlet temperature difference and outlet temperature difference. What is that? So a simple deduction will tell you that the total heat transfer is related to a mean temperature. Total heat transfer is known for us. Why? Because if I know the duty, for example, flow rate and the specific heat, TH1, TH2, TC2, TC1, I know the heat transfer. Flow rate, specific heat, time, the temperature change in any one of the fluid, and that have to be balanced, because heat lost by one fluid will be heat gained by the other fluid. But how to know this U? The problem is posed like this. Now I tell you what exactly the problem is. Now let us consider a situation like this. Let us consider a situation like this. You have a duty fixed. That means you have a duty fixed means you have to cool a hot fluid MH dot from TH1 to TH2 known. And you know that your cold fluid flow rate requirement available is this, and the cold fluid temperature available is this, TC1, which is usually the ambient temperature. So immediately a boy of class 8 will write m dot HCH TH1 minus TH2 is equal to m dot CC TC2 minus TC1, because the entire heat exchange is insulated. So from energy balance, you will write and find out TC2. Find out TC2. Okay, doesn't matter, TC2 you can find or you cannot find. Out of these 4 temperatures, 3 are independent. They are related. I know the duty. That means the heat to be transferred to this. Now I have to find out the area. This is known as sizing of the heat transfer. I will design the heat transfer. First, design first step is to find out the size of the heat transfer area. Then I will use this equation. Here I know U is given to me. From a chart I know that this type of exchanger I am going to use, U is known. Now I have to find out a reference. What is this? I only know the terminal temperatures. What is this delta T? It is not Th1 minus Tc1, neither it is Th2 minus Tc2. So I cannot find out a, how can I use this equation with what delta T? Q I know, U I know. So the next task is to find out this delta T. That means this mean temperature through which we can find out the heat transfer. Clear? So next class I will do that. It is very important, and this is known as log mean temperature difference. So thank you.